Dobre po obede. Chcel som veľmi pekne poprosiť tých z vás, ktorí majú odvahu ostať na ten najlepší panel dnes, aby sa vrátili do miestnosti. Ja som veľmi rád, že aj zložením panela a výnimočných hostí, ktorí budú dnes v paneli vystupovať, v zásade môžeme považovať tému vzdelanostnej ekonomiky za vyriešenú. Takže už len hodinu a pol a je to všetko vyriešené. Dovolte mi, aby som na úvod predstavil Keynote Speakera, alebo hlavného rečníka, vzácneho hostia, ktorý pána doktora Shyu, ktorý je riaditeľom, prezidentom Industrial Technology Research Institute, alebo ako už niekoľkokrát dnes bolo spomenuté ITRI. A pán Shyu si pre nás pripravil prezentáciu. Je to pre mňa výnimočná príležitosť aj pretože od roku 1988 pôsobí v inštitúte ITRI a vlastne sa podielal na tom fenomenálnom úspechu rozvoja nanotechnológií na Tajvane. Takže je to vzácna príležitosť. Mr. Shyu, allow me to welcome you on the speaking panel.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm very honored to present here. My organization, Industrial Technology Research Institute, or ITRI, has been engaged in applied research and helping domestic industries with technology transfer and industrialization for nearly 40 years. We have accumulated rich experiences in nurturing innovation economy in Taiwan. So today I truly appreciate the opportunity to share with you our experiences. First, a brief introduction about Taiwan. Taiwan was formerly known as Formosa, which was named by visiting Portuguese in 1544 with the meaning of a beautiful island. It's a very small island, smaller than Slovakia. It's about 36,000 square kilometer with a 23 population. We've got good rankings in world competitiveness, including global competitiveness ranking by WEF, knowledge economy ranking by World Bank, and world competitiveness ranking by IMD of Switzerland. But the rankings are still not good enough, so we need to work harder. Taiwan has developed many industry sectors clusters over the years. In the 60s, we specialized in attracting foreign direct investment for manufacturing products to be exported. In the 70s, we set up industrial districts which consisted of light and capital-intensive industries. A few R&D institutes were set up during this period, including ITRI in 1973. In the 80s, we began to set up science parks which focus on developing high-tech industries like semiconductor. In late 90s and 2000s, we have added incubators for entrepreneurs and business startups. At the same time, there were more high-tech parks in cooperation with the research institutes, universities, and the industries to develop software, biotech, telecom, etc. Within the small island, Taiwan has a very comprehensive industrial infrastructure, which has major cities with science and industrial parks spanning north to south, all within 1.5 hours of transportation by high-speed rail. You can travel and do business anywhere in Taiwan within 1 day. Many of the science parks have a special development focus by design. There are 3 major science parks dominated by semiconductor and other ICT industries. 3 parks specializing in software, and 2 parks focusing on wireless and internet technology. ITRI is headquarters near Hsinchu Science Park and has another location near Southern Taiwan Science Park. Business Week magazine once highlighted Taiwan's vital role in the global technological supply chain with the headline pronouncement that the global economy here couldn't function without it. Big contributors for Taiwan's achievement today are innovation and entrepreneurship spirit with government support in fostering public-private partnership, which I will explain more later. Now let me have a more introduction on ITRI, which is the largest R&D institution in Taiwan. In 1936, Japanese established the first industrial research lab in Taiwan. It was later transformed to ITRI, a non-profit research institute, in 1973. The missions were straightforward: spearhead new industries and upgrade existing industries in Taiwan. The approach is for ITRI to act as bridge and partner for Taiwanese companies. The roles for ITRI are to take a lead in national R&D projects, facilitate technological diffusion and spin-off, and foster talent flow while encouraging entrepreneurship. Let me explain further how ITRI operates to contribute to the development of Taiwan's high-tech industry. As I presented, ITRI is chartered to research, develop, transfer, and commercialize the technology for industrial use. Our research areas currently cover ICT, biomedical, machinery, nanotech, green energy, and environmental. We have established a shared innovation platform, including open laboratories, incubation center, and a venture arm to collaborate with industrial partners and universities at the early stage and to support the commercialization. As of today, we have over 250 spin-offs and companies incubated from our incubation center and open laboratory. I'd like to emphasize the importance of ITRI's venture arm. It is ITRI's wholly owned investment subsidiary. It handles all of ITRI's spin-off and technology investment activities. However, different from typical VCs in the world, ITRI's venture arm focuses on making industrial impact instead of maximization of financial returns. This is because we believe benefits to ITRI will follow naturally. We typically take minority position mainly to demonstrate ITRI's commitment and to bolster the investor confidence. Once the startup hits its strides, we would normally back out for the startup to stand on its own merits. We have established liaison offices in San Jose, Berlin, Moscow, and Tokyo for global collaboration. For instance, we have several researchers staying at UC Berkeley and Lawrence Berkeley National Lab doing long-term research on green energy with the professors and researchers there. We also have collaboration projects with Fraunhofer of Germany, Moscow State University of Russia, and AIST of Japan. In fact, every year, up to a total of over 70 ITRI researchers and senior managers working with the research partners worldwide. Recently, we further expanded our network in Europe by setting up a new office at Eindhoven, the Netherlands. As a result of our continuous efforts in developing innovative technologies which solve real-world problems, we have received many international recognitions for our technological innovation. Let me just highlight a few recent examples in this slide, including the R&D 100 awards, a Wall Street Journal Technology Innovation Award, and a few others. Many of these research technology outputs that won international awards have been transferred to industry for commercialization, over 70% of this. Let me give you a sampling of ITRI's contributions to Taiwan's economy in two areas, semiconductor and agriculture and tourism. The most important contribution of ITRI is the founding of semiconductor industry in Taiwan. 3 years after ITRI establishment in 1937, RCA of USA transferred its CMOS technology to ITRI. From there on, many researchers at ITRI continued to improve the transferred technology and spun off a few companies, including UNC in 1980, TSMC in 87, TMC in 88, and Vanguard VIS in 94. It marked a whole new chapter for Taiwan's semiconductor industry. And subsequently, more new industries such as personal computer, flat panel display, and other ICTs were created. I'd like to explain the innovative business model of TSMC because it was the first of its kind at the time. A task force was formed in 1986 within ITRI for transferring semiconductor foundry to establish TSMC. Capital investment was around $140 million from different parties, including Philips. 150 ITRI employees joined TSMC from the start. Most importantly, TSMC pioneered the business model of focusing on manufacturing customers' semiconductor designs, therefore help give birth to fabless design companies later. Today, it is the world #1 semiconductor foundry. Its revenue was $16.9 billion last year. The second example is on agriculture and tourism. This is an interesting example. ITRI uses technology to help coffee bean growers in Taiwan. Civic coffee is best known for its origin from Indonesia. Some of you may know this. The coffee bean is famous for its special flavor from a process of having fed the coffee fruits through the civet case and cleaning the droppings later to capture the fermented coffee beans. However, in Taiwan, the local civet cat is of a different breed. That does not quite match the special flavor as in Indonesia. People were also worried about the hygiene issue associated with the in-body fermentation process. So ITRI researchers worked closely with the coffee bean growers to reinvent the process, whereby the bacteria was extracted from the civet cat and have the fermentation process in the lab. In so doing, the price of the coffee beans is now improved to 10 times, while a variety of flavor has been formulated. As an additional benefit, the local growing sites also have become tourist attraction ever since. Now I'd like to talk about some important lessons learned from our experiences in translating science and technology research into innovation. Scientific research is basically curiosity inspired. It is mainly discovery and value neutral. Scale does not matter either, but originality is essential. In contrast, technological innovation is largely usage-driven. We need to create, design, build, manufacture, and mass-produce the product based on the technology. It is value-centered because people need it. So it is sensitive to societal, legal, cultural, and political climate. Quantity and economics are also very important. And entrepreneurship is required because we need to create the business for people to use the technology. The normal objective of research is to develop and accumulate new knowledge with initial investment. If such new knowledge is useful, it will be turned into innovation, which is about commercialization of technology. Sometimes a good innovation will be making money after successful commercialization. Whenever the commercialized value outweighs the total research investment, it is a positive return on research investment. Otherwise, without a positive financial return, a good research can only be good for publication and patenting. Let me explain the national innovation system in Taiwan. Academia, research institute, and industry each plays an important and collaborative role in the system. Typically, when a national vision is formed, government needs to formulate policy and tools for science and technology development. Based on the direction and mechanism set up by the policy, research institute would normally need to collaborate with the universities and industries to develop new technology and incubate new companies. As I just presented, ITRI has been instrumental in applied research and technology development in Taiwan so far. Our mission would not be completed until we push our innovation to commercialization. To develop future technology and stay competitive, Taiwan government has established multi-year national programs to focus on collaborative and innovative R&D among industry, academia, and research institutes. These programs aim to energize the growth of next-generation industries, which will provide leadership in the growth of new products and foster new wave of economic miracle for Taiwan, hopefully. Currently, the programs include semiconductor, telecom, nanotech, energy, biomedical, and others. ITRI is an important and active participant in most of the national R&D programs. In Taiwan, since most industrial companies are relatively small compared to those in US and Japan, we have research institutes like ITRI to focus on applied industrial technology research. We work very closely with the industry and universities. And together, the whole ecosystem focuses on research collaboration among domestic, public-private parties and international partners. In all cooperation models, talent pool is the most critical success factor. Senior experts are involved in different partners, and junior people flow from one sector to another have been a critical factor in creating a true collaborative innovation in Taiwan. Lastly, let me share on how we could work towards an innovation economy in the future. In the course of its development over the past half-century, Taiwan has successfully transformed from an agricultural society to a key player in the global ICT industry. From the labor-intensive industries in the 60s, Taiwan has gone through several industrial transformation phases and upgraded to achieve stellar economic growth, more than 10 times increase in GDP per capita adjusted by PPP over the last 30 years. However, many challenges and uncertainties still lie ahead of us. Therefore, it is even more important for Taiwan to shift its industrial development to innovation focus in the new decade. Mainly due to globalization, Taiwan faces many challenges domestically. Job creation and social happiness are number one concern. Industry transformation for higher value add and sustainable environment with the limited resources are all pressing issues. And with China, the attraction of large market and low-cost production hubs could present both opportunities as well as challenges, such as keeping local talents and industries. So it is imperative for Taiwan to think through its strategy of a cooperative competition with China. Globally, how to forge alliances for market growth and continuously inject business and technology innovation from outside will be the key issues for Taiwan. I believe Europe, US, and Japan all face similar challenges of globalization. There are a few mindsets and approaches that we must change from the traditional ways. In technology R&D, we must explore the new frontier rather than overly optimize the existing domains. We should focus on value creation for target customers instead of just create technology for publication or patents, as I mentioned. We better elevate our R&D horizon from component level to systems and solutions. We need to leverage multidisciplinary integration instead of doing everything by any single source. And we must seek external collaboration and partnership outside of our in-house expertise in Taiwan. In business and services side, we should look beyond the local market to aim the greater regional and global market. And last but not the least, we need to transform ourselves from providing technical services to knowledge-based services. I would like to conclude my presentation with the three key factors in the innovation economy. Firstly, innovation is the ultimate result of turning technological or business creativity into commercialization for real applications. Secondly, knowledge capital, such as domain know-how, will not depreciate over time like physical capital, but rather appreciate over time by continuously accumulating knowledge base. Thirdly, ICT infrastructure is the enabler that helps transfer capital, knowledge capital and technology into a sustainable and scalable system, therefore fostering the commercialization of technological or business creativity. It will also help accelerate the formation of industrialization. However, to achieve innovation economy, government must play a very active role to support science and technology research, to nurture innovation, and to cultivate talent for the industry. Well, thank you all for your attention in my sharing of Taiwan and ITRI experiences in building an innovation economy. I'd like to be your host when you visit Taiwan next time. Thank you.
Ďakujem veľmi pekne a teraz by som rád pozval našich ďalších vzácnych hostí a panelistov. Please would you join me, the panelists. Ďakujem veľmi pekne našim panelistom, že si našli čas a pridali sa k nám, aby možno s nami zdieľali svoje skúsenosti a aby možno sme spolu s nimi sa zamysleli nad tým buzzword, ktorým je knowledge-based economy. Ja sa najprv chcem spýtať, či viete, čo je každý štvrtý štvrtok v mesiaci. Čo to je za deň? Je to zaujímavé, dozvedel som sa to dneska, je to deň žien v IT, ktoré pracujú v IT. Takže dovolte mi na úvod, aby som pogratuloval tým z vás, žien, ktoré ste tu a ktoré teda nejakým spôsobom sa zaujímate buď o IT alebo o vzdelanostnú spoločnosť. No, poďme na úvod. Počuli sme fenomenálne inšpiratívnu prezentáciu z Tajvanu, ktorá hovorila o inovatívnej ekonomike. Hovorila o troch aspektoch, ktoré sú pre úspech potrebné a myslím si, že Tajvan nám vie byť v tomto úžasným príkladom a inšpiráciou. Bola spomínaná IT infraštruktúra, ľudské zdroje a celý ekosystém inovácií. Na Slovensku prebieha dnes diskusia, ktorú ja si dovolím veľmi zhrnúť v že sú ako keby také dve vážky. Keď hovoríme o knowledge economy, tak jeden názor hovorí o tom, že na to, aby Slovensko sa stalo knowledge-based economy, potrebujeme vedieť, ktoré sú naše industries, na ktorých stojí naša ekonomika a potom hľadať spôsob, akým podporiť tieto existujúce kľúčové piliere ekonomiky a vymyslieť nejakú pridanú hodnotu, nejakú inováciu. Niekoľkokrát tu zaznelo inovácie, veda, výskum v procesoch. Druhý pohľad hovorí o tom, že áno, dnes má naša ekonomika nejakú štruktúru, sú tu kľúčové industries, kľúčové časti, zložky, ale čo môžeme robiť preto, aby sme do budúcna možno, že rozvinuli niečo ďalšie. Nejakú oblasť, ktorá dneska možno nie je až taká dôležitá, ale má potenciál stať sa dôležitou, ba kľúčovou. Takže ako jedna z prvých otázok, ktorú mám nachystanú pre našich vzácnych hostí je, ku ktorému z týchto svetonázorov sa oni prikláňajú a ktorá z týchto skúseností je podľa nich zaujímavejšia, aktuálnejšia pre Slovensko. Len taký disclaimer, podľa štúdie Boston Consulting Group, ktorá bola zverejnená minulý rok, internetová ekonomika a IT, čokoľvek, čo súvisí s IT na Slovensku, sa podieľa približne 33% HDP. To znamená, že už povedať, že sme iba manufaktúra aut alebo nejakých iných priemyselných odvetví je asi príliš, nie je to úplne presné. Zároveň tu máme dnes medzi nami viacerých z vás, ktorí ste startupisti, ktorí ste podnikatelia, ktorí práve využívate a prinášate tieto inovácie. To znamená ešte raz, otázka znie je, prikláňať sa k tomu, aby sme nejakým spôsobom vedu, výskum, inovácie podporili existujúce odvetvia a to nazvali Knowledge-Based Society, alebo podporiť možno nové oblasti, ktoré sú perspektívne, ktoré rastú, ale ktoré dnes ešte nemajú taký zásadný vplyv. Keďže pán štátny tajomník ministerstva hospodárstva sa ospravedlňuje, ja by som teda poprosil ako prvého Stevena, Steven, po slovensky, pardon. Steven, vy ste šéfom Dellu, každý vie, čo je Dell, máte úžasnú skupinu ľudí, ktorí pre vás pracujú na Slovensku. Čo sú vaše skúsenosti s ľuďmi, ktorí pracujú pre Dell, možno so Slovákmi? Aká je vaša skúsenosť investovania na Slovensku? Čo sú možno, že lessons learned, čo by ste privítali, preto aby ste možno, že rozšírili vaše operácie na Slovensku, možno, že zvyšovali tú pridanú hodnotu z toho, čo máte teraz. Takže what are your best practices, what are your lessons learned?
Okay, so first of all, I'd like to thank the Department of Foreign and European Affairs and AmCham for setting this up. I think this is a really, really good event, and Dell are particularly proud to be here, not just on this panel, but as a sponsor. I'll give you a little bit of background on Dell, because kind of not everybody may know where we've come from or what we do. I'm sure you know what we do. But Dell started, is actually a founder-led company, so there is a person called Dell, his name is Michael Dell, and he still leads the company. And approximately 29, 30 years ago, he founded the company in a college dormitory in Austin, Texas. I think he got the lend of, it varies from $1,000 to $10,000 from his father, and started building PCs and putting PCs together in his dormitory. And he actually didn't end up finishing college. He his business took off, and he went from there. So, from that start, the company has grown to over 100,000 people and approximately a $60 billion company. And the reason I'll tell you that is, I could tell you one last thing actually, is you may know or you may have read we're in the process, or Michael's in the process of trying to take the company private again. And that's all in process, and you guys probably, if you browse the internet, probably know more about the current state of that than I do. But he's referred to, this journey going private as we will shortly be the world's largest startup. And that just gives you a little kind of clue into his mindset, that while we may well be a very large corporate multinational, we're very much being run by an entrepreneur with an innovative view to how to do things. So that's the first thing I would say. I'll talk just a little bit, and those of you who know me know I talk probably more than a little bit, but I'll talk a little bit about probably the single biggest problem that's facing our industry and our customers, and Jerry spoke about it earlier on when he was talking on his piece, and that's the problem of data. Yeah? It's the single biggest problem the IT industry has, our customers have. Andre, your company has a huge challenge with it and is actually doing a great job on it, but it's a massive challenge for us all. And there is a route to where I'm getting to here in terms of what role Slovakia can play in that. If I look at kind of I tend to categorize data and the problems in data in 4 areas. The first piece is how you manage the data. So that's how do you physically manage? Where do you put it? Yeah, and data centers is the kind of thing, and everyone talks about the cloud and public clouds and private clouds, but the bottom line is it's the cloud's in a data center somewhere. And the next piece of that it will be, well, how do you access that data? Yeah, and everybody wants access to data immediately. I generally do a quick show of hands when I do this type of event. How many people here have a laptop or a desktop? I think everybody does. Come on, everybody's got a laptop or desktop. How many people have a laptop, desktop, and a smartphone? Okay, and a tablet? Yeah, why? Because you want access to your data in different ways, at different times, for different functions, yeah? My wife hates the BlackBerry I carry around because it's the first thing I do in the morning is check the email that came in overnight, because apparently Dell stops working if I don't do my email. It doesn't. But it's the point being is that access to data, and that access to data 24/7 is critically important to everybody. We all view it that way. The third piece is around security of that data. Yeah, being able to move that data around. Yeah, so if it's sensitive data, how do you make sure it's secure? How do you make sure you can move it around? How do you know when you put data up somewhere that you use a Google search engine to find that that data is kept safe? Yeah. And the final piece of it is, how do you analyze the data? What do you get out of it? Data is only as good as the analysis that you put into it. Now, those four areas have different priorities for different people, different consumers, different companies, different whatever, yeah? And, you know, if you take Jerry's industry, for example, it's the analysis of that data is really key and drives where he needs to go next. For other people, it'll be the security of that data. So for a lot of government and public bodies, it's having very secure data. For companies like ourselves, it's all of them, because our customers give us, they don't come to us anymore with a shopping list of products. They come to us with a problem. And their problems typically include the word data in the first sentence, around either managing it, securing it, analyzing it, or any of the things I've already spoken about. So that's critical. So when you talk about, you know, is it an either or, you know, an existing business or new startup business? It's both, because existing businesses need to act like startups pretty much every day to keep pace at the rate of change that's going on, not just in the IT industry, but in the industry in general. And I think one of the biggest challenges a company like Dell has is keeping 100,000 innovators and entrepreneurs and trying to have 100,000 innovators and entrepreneurs as employees, and that's very, very challenging for us. So I think that's the first thing I would say, and it's not an either-or conversation, by the way. You have to have both. You don't have one without the other. As I said, Dell became a 100,000 person company on the back of somebody in a college dorm 30 years ago. So, you know, the two are inextricably linked. You don't have one without the other. If I talk about the role that Slovakia can play or will play when it looks, and if I just take that particular data problem, it's a particularly massive one. I've heard, and I don't see if the ambassador to the US is here, Peter, but I think there's a big focus on cybersecurity, and that appears to be the horse that Slovakia is hitching its wagon to. If I could be so bold, I would say don't just hitch it to one wagon. Cybersecurity has been around for a while. A lot of countries try and do it, a lot of people do it very well. And Slovakia, while ESET is a great example of a really strong IT security company, there are so many elements to cybersecurity and IT security. You know, I would say kind of look at a niche area within that. If you look at the other areas around the analysis of data, I think the intellectual horsepower that's in this country is massive, and I think that's an area that could certainly be looked at as how can Slovakia find a niche in terms of analysing data. And if I look at some of the biomedical companies that I've spoken with here today, I know Vincent's company, I think there was another company, Genome, and forgive me if I got it wrong, but a lot of what they're doing is analysing the data from a medical perspective. Yeah, so they're already doing that. Yeah. So how do you take the concept and the principle that's in a biomedical industry and apply it across all industries? Because the principles will be fairly consistent. Yeah. The end industry you're working on may not be, but the principles will be pretty similar. you think of things like R&D, research and development, and pretty much all R&D type facilities, particularly in the IT world, will have a data center type component to it. And for those of you who've heard me at any of these sessions in the last year or so, you're probably sick hearing me talk about the single biggest reason why you won't have major data center business in Slovakia is the cost of energy. Because the cost of energy is not the domain of manufacturing, yeah, and everybody thinks it is. There is the single biggest cost of maintaining a data center is the cost of energy, yeah. And in our business, because I've tried to get a data center set up in my company over here, and our people have told me it is cheaper to set up a data center and maintain a data center in London than it is in Bratislava. Now, who would have thought that? Yeah, nobody. Okay, so that's critical, is that people understand what's involved in this and what it's going to take to kind of, as I said, hitch your wagon too. The other kind of, the final point I'll make before I hand over will be, if you talk about some of the key components of having a true knowledge-based economy, it kind of really starts and ends with people. Yeah, and they're the single biggest kind of asset a country has, a company has, a country has, in terms of building out that knowledge-based economy. And the key to helping them be successful will be providing them a safe environment. Yeah, and what I mean by safe environment is an environment where they can try things, an environment where it's not a stigma to fail. Yeah, that's critically important. Yeah, and that ties into the next piece, which is the education system. And the education system is a key for producing those people that have an innovative mindset. Yeah, and I mentioned last night one of the more unusual things I came across in. I actually live in Czech, so I know this is a Czech and a Slovak thing. Is the concept of the red diploma for people who leave university. So the Slovaks and Czechs in the room probably know what a red diploma is. For those of you who don't, it's basically you get a special red diploma if you get all A's through your college course. Yeah, so it's kind of it's a pretty big thing. And that's great. It means you're very smart, and you know, if I could be so bold, it basically means you're really good at learning information and reciting it a very short period after, and then immediately forgetting it. As far as I can see, that's about as much as it tells you. But the other thing, and the more sinister thing underneath that is it actually creates an environment where failing is bad. It creates an environment where if you don't hit 100%, it's a bad thing. And when you take that out of education, you take it into the business world, it basically it creates people that are afraid to take risk. And the key to innovation, the key to entrepreneurship is risk, taking risk. Yeah, I know through my academic life, the risk I took was not studying and showing up and hoping I remembered it on the day. It's kind of worked okay because I've kind of survived okay with it. But if you take it, you know, what needs to happen next from that perspective is, you know, the education system is, and I think, Charles, you call it the three-legged stool, or you refer to something as a three-legged stool, so I'm going to kind of take your terminology. And the three-legged stool for this is, it's business, it's academia, and it's state, government. Each of those three have an equal responsibility to the quality of the education system. So business can't just point at academia and say, you're not producing good enough people that are fit to come into my business. Academia can't turn and point to the government and say, you don't invest enough in academic institutions to allow me to produce them. And the government can't say, well, the business don't talk to me, so I don't know what they want. Yeah, it's a three-way thing, and that's pretty difficult. Yeah, it's like being married to two people. Yeah, they're both kind of going different ways, and you kind of got to keep them all together. But that is really, really critical, and I would say that would be a really important thing for any of the government folks here, any of the business folks, and any of the academic folks here to take away with. It's no one person's or one group's responsibility. It's a joint responsibility. I think it's probably about as much as I'll say for now, and I'll kind of pass over for someone else. I hope that answered the question. I kind of went on a little bit, but to summarize, the answer to the question is it's not an either or, it's both.
OK, thank you. Ďakujem veľmi pekne. Ešte predtým, ako poprosím druhého speakera, tak chcel som vás pozvať. Máme tu aplikáciu slide.do a /amcham. Môžete sa pýtať svoje otázky, aby sme o inováciách a moderných trendoch nielen rozprávali, ale možno sa ich aj aktívne zúčastnili. Zároveň je možné hlasovať o prioritách a tém, ktoré považujete za veľmi kľúčové pri téme knowledge-based economy. Takže takisto na tejto tabuli môžete vidieť a svojim telefónom tohto hlasovania môžete zúčastniť. Steven sa venoval úžasne zaujímavým veciam, a dotkol sa od otázky dát a inovácií až po otázku ľudského kapitálu, human capital. A niektorí z nás v Bratislave máme pocit, že chodíme na konferencie, diskutujeme, debatujeme a stále sa nevie nájsť nejaké riešenie. No a potom sú niektorí, ktorí nediskutujú, nie sú negatívne naladení a nakoniec vytvoria niečo jedinečné a unikátne. Ja som preto veľmi rád, že ako druhý panelista je s nami Jožko Ondáš z Košice IT Valley. Je to, ktorý je zástupcom projektu, ktorý si povedal na východe Slovenska špičkových ľudí IT. No, mnohí z nás by možno pred pár rokmi povedali, neviem. No ale našťastie Jožko Ondáš si to nepovedal a teraz je v Košiciach niekoľko tisíc ľudí, ktorí pracujú, vyzerajú byť veľmi spokojní, vzdelávajú sa, rastú. Jožko, čo bolo kľúčom k úspechu, aby sa vytvoril tento ekosystém na východe Slovenska?
No, v prvom rade chcem povedať, že ja naozaj si neprajem, Andrej, aby tí ľudia v Košiciach boli spokojní a ja práve naopak by som si prijal, aby boli nespokojní, aby sa neustále búrili voči tomu, čo majú a aby dosahovali krajšie a krajšie výsledky. Čo bolo kľúčom? To nemá kľúč, ale má to za sebou jednu myšlienku a ja použijem dve nádherné slovenské porekadlá, nech mi zahraniční hostia prepáčia, lebo tie porekadlá vychádzajú z našej kultúry. A jedno porekadlo je, my ho máme na východe veľmi radi, že Bratislava ďaleko, mieni sa tým centrálna vláda, Pán Boh vysoko, človeče, pomôž si sám. A potom to druhé, to ide z ďalekej histórie, ktoré hovorí, človeče, pomôž si, aj Pán Boh ti pomôže. Takže keď sme začali budovať niekoľko firiem v Košiciach a mali sme takú víziu, že nás raz bude 2,5 tisíc, to bolo v roku 2006, to sme ani do 5 rokov, to sme ani netušili, že to bude 6 tisíc. A celé to začalo tým, že sme si sadli spolu univerzity, stredné školy, firmy, verejná správa, čiže kraj a mesto a povedali sme si, čo chceme a približne za aký čas dosiahnuť. Povedali sme si, diaľnicu ešte nemáme, ale jednu diaľnicu už máme a to je ten veľký kábel s mnohými optickými vláknami, ktorý do Košic smeruje. Hovoríme, že my v podstate nemáme žiadne obmedzenia, okrem toho, že nám utekli z východného Slovenska všetci mladí odborníci, ktorí len trošku vedeli C++, Javu alebo rozumeli trošku internetu, takže všetko zmizlo. Praha, Brno, Bratislava alebo zahraničie. Tak sme si povedali, že musíme to zázrať, ten vyššie circle musíme rozťať a rozhodneme ho dvomi spôsobami. Poprvé, začneme budovať tie firmy a po druhé, spolu v tom združení, o ktorom som hovoril, sa pokúsime vychovať pre ten začiatok kritickú masu ľudí, aby sme mali s tým pracovať. A naozaj toto sa podarilo. Čiže mohol som aj plakať, respektíve mohol som povedať, tak ten projekt neberiem a ostanem niekde inde v Európe alebo vo svete, ale povedal som, nie, to urobíme a dohodli sme sa a my sme to urobili. Čiže začali sme tie firmy budovať, ja hovorím, nie len T-Systems, aj keď T-Systems bol ten najväčší, ale bol tam Siemens, bola tam RWE IT, VSE IT, NES, KDC, to je NES Košice Development Center, T-System a spustu ďalších menších firiem, ktoré potrebovali zdroje, všetci plakali, že nemajú ľudia, tak poďme a vychovajme si ich. Máme plno absolventov, ktorí žiaľ, keď mali 18 rokov, tak sa rozhodli študovať niečo, čo dnes už nikto nepotrebuje, tak skúsme využiť ohromný intelektuálny potenciál a skúsme to, dajme im príležitosť, vzdelajme ich a dajme ich do tých firiem, aby začali produkovať. A naozaj ukázalo sa to ako správna cesta. Môžem vám rovno povedať, že jeden dobrý strojár, alebo šikovný strojár, alebo silový energetik, alebo chemik, alebo biológ, alebo matematik, alebo fyzik, alebo teológ, je za pol roka schopný pracovať na úrovni, ak zoberieme 5 úrovní, v technologických úrovní, ktoré potrebujeme pokryť, tak na druhej úrovni je za pol roka schopný, myslím z východného Slovenska, nemyslím tým z Bratislavy, ale z východného Slovenska je schopný za pol roka pri minimálnych nákladoch, pri ohromnej námahe a je schopný sa to naučiť tak, aby sme ho mohli pustiť k zákazníckým systémom. U sieti to trvá trošku dlhšie, u databáz to trvá trošku dlhšie, ale v zásade toto je taký priemer. Takže my sme to urobili, spolu s vysokými školami sme pripravili veľmi špeciálne kurzy, my sme ich nazývali farmy, kde v priebehu 3 mesiacov dostali základné vzdelanie, myslím ITRI vzdelanie, potom boli testy a tí ďalší už pracovali a popri práci sa ďalej vzdelávali, hovorím, za pol roka sme ich nagenerovali okolo 2,5 tisíc. Takže my sme skutočne urobili taký malý zázrak. A keď už to bolo, tak už tá snehová guľa išla ďalej a našťastie tam je na východnom Slovensku ešte stále veľa dobrého snehu v podobe mladých potenciálnych ľudí. Takže my sme nabalovali a dneska je nás v tejto oblasti informačných komunikačných technológií okolo 6 tisíc. Čiže ja len použijem to slovo, čo pán profesor Wessner povedal, že keď sa ho pýtali, že komu najviac verí pri presadzovaní týchto myšlienok, on povedal, že no vám, vy si musíte veriť. Tak my sme si verili, všetci si musíme veriť a nečakať na to, že nám to niekto vyrieši. Musíme tie metódy bottom-up, čiže človeče pomôž si, aj Pán Boh ti pomôže. Tieto metódy musíme používať čoraz ďalej a viac a lepšie. A ak samozrejme dostali sme sa do určitej kvality, kde už celkom tie bottom-up metódy neplatia, ale keďže sme ten balón nafúkli, on je nafúknutý dobrým plynom, to nie je nejaký jedovatý plyn. My sme ho poslali hodne vysoko a sme už viditeľní, takže už dneska aj centrálna vláda vidí, že tento príklad je hodný nasledovania a naozaj nás začala významne podporovať. Musím povedať, že ministerstvo hospodárstva tým, že nám umožnilo vytvoriť a podporilo nás pri vytváraní klastra, čiže Košice ITRI už nie je len združenie, je to oficiálny klaster certifikovaný podľa európskych štandardov. Toto sme urobili za významnej pomoci ministerstva hospodárstva a v pondelok a zase za významnej pomoci ministerstva hospodárstva sme na východnom Slovensku naštartovali, obnovili po 20 rokoch duálne vzdelávanie, ktoré by znovu malo prispieť k tomu, aby sme generovali lepších a lepších ľudí, ktorých potrebujeme pre jednotlivé firmy. Začíname sieťami, začíname serverami, začíname tými základnými vecami, ale ako sme vykopli, sme urobili v podstate kick-off v pondelok. Od septembra sa začína duálne vzdelávanie naozaj naplno realizovať. Máme prísľub od ministerstva školstva, že podporí toto duálne vzdelávanie aj finančne, pretože ináč by sme ho museli znovu sami a to má svoje limity. A ako náhle sme to oznámili, tak začali prichádzať rôzne podniky z východného Slovenska. Aj my chceme duálne vzdelávanie, aj my chceme, hovorím, výborne, počkajte, urobíme jeden pilot, jeden rok a ďalšie roky, ako náhle vyjde legislatíva, lebo aj tá vyjde a už je vlastne platná od 1.1.2014 by duálne vzdelávanie malo byť riadnou súčasťou systému vzdelávania na Slovensku a malo by byť financované zo štátneho rozpočtu podľa nejakých normatívov, ktoré aj nepoznám, ale vy ich asi poznáte. Takže všetko ide, ak sa chce. A ja poviem toľko, áno, ak sme sa dostali na vyššiu kvalitu, už musíme rozmýšľať aj ďalej. Veľmi ma zaujalo to, čo dnes bolo dopoludňa, pán Štefunko a jeho panel, kedy hovoril o startupoch, o podpore inovácií. A to, samozrejme, keď sme sa dostali na túto kvalitu klastra, tak my už teraz ideme týmto smerom a máme kritickú masu, tak s touto kritickou masou sa už bude dať niečo robiť a rádi využijeme všetky tieto skúsenosti, ktoré mnohí z vás pri generovaní inovácií a nových podnikov, startupov majú. Ďakujem za pozornosť.
Ďakujem veľmi pekne, Jožko. Sú to veľmi inšpiratívne skúsenosti a zaujímavé je na tom práve, že možno, že v tejto diskusii, nielen dnešnej, ale v našej spoločnosti nezaznie toľko pozitívnych odporúčaní na štátnu správu, ako zaznelo počas tejto skúsenosti, ktorú prezentoval Jozef Vonda z Košice IT Valley. Takže ja by som sa teraz rád obrátil na našich vzácnych hostov a zástupcov štátnej správy. Máme tu zástupcu ministra hospodárstva, Martin Svoboda. Bavili sme sa o inováciách, o potrebe ľudského kapitálu, o tom, ako zmeniť Slovensko, aby bola z neho krajina, ktorá ide smerom k knowledge-based economy, vzdelanostná spoločnosť. Čo je vízia ministerstva hospodárstva pre Slovensko?
Dobrý deň, tak v prvom rade by som chcel ospravedlniť pána štátneho tajomníka, ktorý sa zhodou okolností nachádza na obdobnom podujatí, ktoré zhodou okolností tiež organizuje ministerstvo zahraničných vecí. A ja by som skúsil tak plynulo prejsť aj cez tú prvú otázku a takto. Určite z pohľadu hospodárstva je trošku nezmysel, alebo teda aj z pohľadu mňa hovoriť, že netreba podporovať tieto core industries, ktoré u nás sú, teda automotív, elektrotechnika, strojárstvo a tieto veci. Ale každopádne na ne sú naviazané veľké siete dodávateľov, 99,9% podnikov tvoria malé stredné podniky, tie vytvárajú veľký priestor pre zakladanie startupov a teda. A na druhej strane tuto boli príklady práve v istých inovatívnych smeroch, čo určite je IKT, IT, robotika, na východe energetika. A v plánoch hospodárstva určite nebudeme tieto odvetvia obchádzať a práve formou podpory startupov a iných nástrojov finančného inžinierstva budeme sa venovať aj týmto odvetviam. Čo sa týka kvality pracovnej sily alebo teda vzdelanostnej úrovne pracovnej sily, zlým trendom na Slovensku momentálne je slabá orientácia na techniku, či už na úrovni stredných škôl alebo vysokých škôl. Priznám sa, neviem, ako je to na úrovni malých stredných podnikov, ale veľké firmy ako Samsung, Volkswagen a teda práve bojujú s tým, že po tejto stránke im systém školstva, teda stredných odborných škôl alebo vysokých škôl neposkytuje dostatočnú úroveň. A za to vítam aj túto iniciatívu, ktorá by sa teda mala asi spustiť od 1.1. vo forme duálneho systému vzdelávania, ktorý určite má podporu aj na pôde ministerstva hospodárstva v spolupráci s ministerstvom školstva samozrejme. A je to jedna z ciest, teda, kde sa dá nájsť kompromis medzi podnikateľským sektorom a tou tripartitou, ktorou hovoril tuto môj predrečník, kde isté, aspoň praktické zručnosti si vie firma vzdelávať sama vo vlastných podmienkách a pripraviť tak čo najlepšie potenciálneho zamestnanca pre seba.
Ďakujem veľmi pekne. Zaznelo tu spolupráca dvoch ministerstiev, a ministerstva hospodárstva a ministerstva školstva. Máme tu zástupcu ministerstva financií, pán Robert Augst. Vás som sa chcel spýtať na úvod. Táto otázka zaznela aj z publika. Ako hodnotíte spoluprácu? Sme tu na pôde MZV, inováciám sa venujú viaceré inštitúcie na Slovensku. Ministerstvo financií je pri mnohých z týchto rozhovorov kľúčové. keďže má kľúče od tej pokladnice, od nástrojov, ktorými môžeme podporovať inovácie, vzdelanostnú ekonomiku na Slovensku. Ako hodnotíte v prvom rade spoluprácu štátnych inštitúcií medzi sebou v oblasti inovácií? A druhá vec, ako hodnotíte, alebo čo považujete možno za úspechy a priestor pre zlepšenie prístupu Ministerstva financií preto, aby inovácie, aby skrátka Slovensko kráčalo cestou k vzdelanostnej spoločnosti? Ďakujem.
Okay, so really if, there are a couple of people here from foreign countries, so let me speak in English to make it slightly easier for you. So maybe to answer your question, I mean, in very recent time, I think we put together a very good team of people at the Ministry of Finance who are actually looking in the pro-growth agenda, especially in terms of utilization of EU funds in more innovative ways, which was also done during the previous period. However, the new programming period of the EU budget is opening doors for other possibilities and is actually extending and making these financial solutions more flexible than they were before. And based on this, we are actually approaching pretty much all the ministries, especially the Ministry of the Economy, also the Ministry of Environment, and the Ministry of Education. What we are actually aiming for is to use the EU funds in a very efficient way. We have a very strong view at the Ministry of Finance in the terms that we want to use, if we want to support, let's say, venture capital, seed capital, SMEs, private ventures, only through using reusable financing. So this means that we don't want to support just pure grants because we think that they can actually be quite intrusive in terms of the market, and also don't provide the right incentives which the entrepreneurs are looking for, which actually means that if we invest the capital, essentially we want this capital back, and then it can be reused and reused and reused. This is how it works in most civilized worlds, so therefore we think this would be a very progressive way of thinking. As well, what I really enjoyed during this conversation is what my colleague here said from the Dell is the very, very essence of thinking and risk-taking in Slovakia. I think what our mentality is very entrenched in, like, okay, let's have something very stable, let's have some very plain vanilla business, but this is not how the modern economies do work at the current stage. We are in a very hyper-competitive world where we see that we have very extremely high growth in East Asia, and we have extremely slow economies in a southern peripheral European countries. And where we want to put Slovakia, we are in the middle. We were tetra tiger, however, we are being affected by the crisis in the Eurozone. Therefore, for us, really essential not to rely on European markets, but we somehow need to penetrate the global markets. And I think, the only one way how to do it is through using new technologies, which means, the internet, essentially the startups which can reach the entire global market. And essentially, as we've seen, maybe in small countries such as Finland, we have a case of Nokia, which actually through several decades actually became a global leader. Not doing that great at the moment, but this is one of the stories that even one company can make a difference for one single small country. So maybe your initial question was, should we support the old industry? Should we more focus on startups? I think it's a mixture of both, because there are obviously the synergies. But if you're looking for very, very fast-paced growth, I think we need to look at some seeds of new technologies, new inventions, and really go and support this area. And I think utilizing finances in this way can help the approach. Also, what we are criticized as a Ministry of Finance is taxing a lot. However, we need to keep in mind that there are certain rules which are imposed, which we impose on ourselves because we want to be fiscally sound, because markets are watching us. On the other hand, I think in a year or two, the focus of the Ministry of Finance will be more on growth and how to help the businesses. So we're always open about constructive discussion and concrete proposals how we can make the tax system more efficient, especially when we are dealing with smaller companies where we think the potential for growth is essentially higher. So I mean maybe in very brief description, I would stop here. So thank you so much.
Ďakujem veľmi pekne. Spomínali ste, Robert, systém inovácií, spomínali ste o tom, ako podporiť rast. Máme medzi nami aj Charlesa Hollanda, ktorý reprezentuje US Office of Naval Research Global. A ja by som rád využil túto príležitosť a spýtal sa. Hovoríme tu, a to je aj otázka, ktorá zaznela od niekoho z vás publika, hovoríme tu o vedomostnej spoločnosti, o vedomostnej ekonomike, ale ako urobiť ten tranzit medzi tými vedomosťami k tomu, že tie vedomosti majú impact v ekonomike, sa prejavia v ekonomike, v raste spoločnosti, v raste krajiny. No a Charles, o vás vieme, že máte na starosti, že ste technical lead, to znamená, že máte na starosti posudzovanie tých technológií a ich využitie, možnosť ich komercionalizácie. Takže aké sú vaše skúsenosti, čo sú možno kritéria, podľa ktorých posudzujete, ktoré z tých technológií, ktoré sa vám dostanú na stôl, majú akú využiteľnosť v dnešnom globálnom svete?
Okay, thanks very much. Well, first, it's a real pleasure to be here today. I've had over about 30 years experience in managing science and technology programs for the Department of Defense, the U.S. Department of Defense. I've done this for the Navy. I've done this for the Air Force. I worked for the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, and I've worked in the Pentagon. And after those 30 years, I got a chance to come over here and be in Prague, where I'm part of the Office of Naval Research's activities globally. And my job is really to come out and look for interesting science and technology in Central and Eastern Europe, that kind of technology that would be useful to the Navy, and try to build bridges between this capability that exists here and that back in the United States. Because we believe that we don't have all the answers to the world back in the U.S., and in particular, we don't always have the answers that are the most cheap and most effective. So technology is global. Let me just say a little bit about the Office of Naval Research, if I may. It was created in 1946 at the end of World War II, when the United States recognized that science and technology played a principal role in sort of giving us the capability to execute that war. And we also recognized that there was a lot going on internationally, although as a result of the way things had occurred in Europe, that perhaps life was difficult. We established an office in London in 1946 to try to help rebuild the science and technology programs in Europe. We've had that office since 1946. We moved with an office in Tokyo in the 1970s, and now we have smaller branch offices in Santiago, Chile, Singapore, and in Prague, the Czech Republic. We moved to Prague in the Czech Republic because we wanted to be closer to this activity that we didn't have exposure to in Central and Eastern Europe till the end of the fall of the Berlin Wall and resulted, activities. We moved to Prague because Prague seemed to have better airport. The ambassador there liked us, not that because everything was being done in Prague. Okay, I want to assure you of that. And we're trying to look broadly. So what we're trying to do is discover and make connections and help people and help ourselves. And we have a series of mechanisms where we do that. We go out and find people who want to run workshops that get together international communities. So we'll fund workshops in various countries in Central and Eastern Europe for people who want to run those. And then you can invite both the U.S. community as well as the people who are here. We support conferences, but we also like to fund specialized conferences. I'm out traveling around. I try to find people that I think have interesting ideas that might want to go back to the U.S. and go to our conference and also stop by and see some people that we're interested in them talking to. So we provide support for that. And then we also provide support for research grants in areas that we think are of interest, not only in IT, but nanotechnology broadly. We try to fund modest-sized research grants. Probably our definition is modest is probably good enough for you, I think. I mean, it's so. But then if it turns out that after we discover that these are kind of going somewhere, they're more likely to be funded by the larger sums of money back at headquarters. So what we're really about is trying to build connectivity, trying to discover ideas. You might sort of view me as a technology scout, I guess. If I could have just a couple of minutes. So I'm really excited about the opportunity to be here in Slovakia. I'm excited about the job. I think it's an important job, and I think it's an important mission. I did spend 30 years running science and technology programs in the Department of Defense, and we're both a curiosity-driven kind of activity as well as sort of a technology-driven activity. I ran, in my office that I ran in DARPA, we had one program that was trying to produce the equivalent of a commander's assistant. So look at all the information this commander is seeing and what kind of decisions he has to make. And you might, for those of you who know this TV show or movie MASH, it was produced the equivalent of a radar O'Reilly. Okay, so commander is besieged with lots of information. Can you automatically learn what that commander knows to do and improve his capability over time, while he's doing other things? Well, we transitioned a little bit of that technology into the military, but we were funding Stanford Research Institute that was leading a large group of universities, and they decided to spin that out and create this company called Siri that was bought by Apple. So we're excited about that. So the thing about the military is we're willing to take risk. Our cost-benefit ratio is not the same as people who are trying to make a profit in year one. So what we like to do is we like to look at an interesting idea and say, can we take the technology risk off the table? Can it be done? It then may be too expensive, or it may not fit the concept of operations that you might want to do. But we're really about looking at the potential and taking the technology risk off the table. Okay, that's probably enough. I could talk forever because I really love it, but I think that's enough.
Ďakujem veľmi pekne. Pán prezident Shyu, vy ste hovorili o jedinečnom príbehu inštitútu ITRI. Príbeh Tajvanu je úžasný a inšpiratívny. Čo boli ale prekážky, s ktorými ste sa stretli?
Whenever we have good research results or technology to transfer to the industry or spin-off, we may run the risk of losing best people. Okay. If we don't have good technology, we don't have this problem. But if we have good technology to transfer people, then our best researchers may just leave our institute to join the industry. So we need to recruit and cultivate researchers to start new projects over again. That's our best challenge, the challenges we face.
And what have been the tools that you use to resolve the situation or somehow keep the...
No, we don't keep them. We just let them go.
You let them go?
Yeah. So whenever we have a success story, we just celebrate one day, and then next day we need to recruit new people. We don't keep them.
Aha, ďakujem. Ďalšia otázka z publika zaznela na pána Roberta Augsta. Počuli sme tu od rôznych od speakerov v predchádzajúcich paneloch od Charlesa Wesnera o tom tézu, že teda iba recyklovať nejakým spôsobom financie, ktoré sú v systéme, nestačí a je aj miesto vlády pre povedzme nejakú grantovú podporu alebo nejaké formy podpory, ktoré sú možno, že realizovateľné na Slovensku. Na druhej strane je tu zámer ministerstva financií, úctyhodný zámer udržiavať verejné financie v zdravom stave. Nepovažujete tieto dve priority za ako sa na ne pozeráte, aby sme možno, a či teda nezdieľate tú obavu, že v tej snahe byť najzdravší nakoniec pozabíjame nejaké zlaté vajcia do budúcna?
Okay, so I think this is more or less typical question which goes right in the heart of the current discussion of like, you know, either you have growth or either you cut your deficit and reduce your debt. And I think essentially, you know, it's for small economies as ours, you know, we really do rely on capital markets, and most of the capital markets are actually looking at both things. So at the moment, you know, there is a very strong legislation from the EU, so for us it's pretty much impossible to escape these rules. However, you know, from next year we will actually reduce our deficit, hopefully under 3%, and, you know, which means that, you know, we will not be in the worst procedure within the EU sort of budgeting and deficit rules. Therefore, you know, we will have some larger place for maneuver. But however, you know, we think that, you know, through certain logical, you know, even structural measures, you know, we can utilize some of the funds. As I said, you know, the sort of reuse of EU funds will be only for entrepreneurs, so people who are actually trying to make profit. If you are trying to make profit, you know, I think it's logical that we essentially want at least the capital back. You can take the proceeds or the profit. However, you know, for the very basic research, I think this is where the EU grants should be utilized. So if you're giving a grant, you know, it should be for basic research, where basically your return or what your expectation of profit are essentially zero. You are just doing it for the betterment of mankind. So okay, that's fine. But however, you know, if you move to the next stage, you know, if you want to apply this, you know, either through seed or venture capital, and you want to move on, you know, to maybe larger corporations, you know, this needs to be from the perspective of Ministry of Finance through the use of or reuse of these EU funds. However, you know, our sort of experience is that, you know, still most of the funds will be used in more or less classical way. However, you know, we want to give incentives to the industry to use funds more efficiently and do not sort of distract the market to that degree that there will be almost total reliance on EU funds. However, you know, we want to refocus most of the funds towards, you know, I would say pro-growth aims and pro-growth areas. And we see the pro-growth areas, especially in education. As we said, you know, the education system in Slovakia, it's, in my opinion, in terrible shape. You know, we are totally non-competitive, besides maybe few programs. You know, there are actually some good examples, but overall, if we move from the very basic to the sort of higher education, I think the level in terms of, you know, if you want to compete with very best, like maybe Anglo-Saxon schools, I mean, we are not even close. We are not even close to German and Austrian schools. And I actually read an article in Austrian newspapers that actually the University of Vienna was actually way below, you know, the league tables. And, you know, I don't think we are even close to Vienna University. So, you know, if we compare ourselves to, you know, like very strongholds like MIT, Stanford, Harvard, Cambridge, I can name them all, but, you know, the essence is that our best scientists actually go to these universities, and then they end up either in private research institutions in foreign countries, or they end up in let's say, financial industry in all these hubs. So essentially we are losing our best talent. And what will be very, very critical for another like 10 or 20 years if we can contain few of these very, very top people here in Slovakia and put them in institutions where they can actually improve the society and improve the business environment, you know, given all the constraints which we have at the moment, you know. So I think that the question of growth has multi levels, and it's not just merely a question of, you know, what is your deficit, what's your debt level, what is your current expenditure. Okay, you can boost your GDP, but, you know, if you look at the structural measures, this is what will, you know, drive you for another 10 or 20 years. So we need to essentially change our structure, move from heavy industry machinery into more high added value, which is essentially the research. So I think, you know, this is sort of the answer. Thank you.
Spomína sa tu niekoľkokrát vzdelávanie. Ja by som chcel dať priestor aj vám, ktorí ste v publiku, a pravidelne sa pozerám na otázky, ktoré ste položili cez telefón, ale ak má niekto z vás otázku priamo, tak nech sa páči. I see Charles raising a hand. Nech sa páči.
You know, Robert, you speak really excellent English, and you might want to read Mike Spence and Joe Stiglitz, who got a Nobel Prize for their work on the failures of markets in early stage finance. The venture capital as a class of assets has lost money in the last 10 years in the United States. A third don't return capital. The next third, if you're lucky, gives you back the money after 5 to 7 years. Just your capital. Another 25% are what they call the living dead. That is to say they're alive, but there's not going to be a liquidity event. About 3% actually make some big money. Now I'm sure your programs with EU money will be able to do much better than that. Well, we take you seriously what you say. You know, you said all civilized countries, right, respect these market rules. Well, East Asia is where civilization was invented. It's also where a small company called Faison was invented. And they had a young Malaysian Chinese who was seeking some help, and so he went to a place called ITRI. And ITRI brought them in and gave them a room. And they provided them with mentoring services. And they helped them to use their equipment and their facilities. And then they helped them apply for something called SBIRs, which is the Taiwanese version of SBIRs. And once they had attracted some capital, they helped them move to a new facility and introduced them, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Toshiba. And Toshiba became their big customer. But it also protected them from the lawsuits and the harassment that Samsung and others might have done. Now they're $1 billion company. And I'm sure the Taiwanese people and the thousands of employees of Faison feel bad that they didn't follow classic economic precepts. I'm, of course, still waiting for the private sector to invent the internet. I was hoping they would get to it, but somehow the private capital markets didn't want to invest for 25 years. So I think, and you know, when we have, and I say this firmly, but I hope you'll take it collegially, you know, when the Ministry of Finance gets those special stars from the EU for having respected the 3% target, I hope the 20 or 30% unemployed here feel better that you're conform. You know, the only countries that don't respect that seem to be most of the other countries. So there's no prize. Actually, there's a lot of pain. So I would, in this space, when you're trying to create companies, you want to encourage the framework conditions for private enterprise. Do you have positive conditions for angel investors? Can they carry a loss forward? But I would respectfully suggest the idea that you're going to be able to perform better than the entire U.S. venture capital industry, make money in a reasonable time and be able to reinvest it, attract entrepreneurs who want that kind of money when they have to pay it back, when the government, in effect, or the government's funds becomes their partner. And again, I say this respectfully. I know it's a tough space to be in, but I think some more thinking needs to be done. I mean, ask Peter Kuhn. You know, when I was in IT, we used to have this joke as a last resort: ask the user. And you know, ask the user over there, would he want money that he had to pay back? Would he have taken SBRs that he had to pay back immediately to the government, and they would have had an equity position in his company? I'm not serious. Peter, what would you?
It's actually, I mean, there's a point to be made for loan structure. And loan structures exist in the US as well. If as a company I'm at a point where I can take out a loan, I can go to the bank. Unless it's a very special initiative where the government steps in, fair enough. But if I am in a position to take out a loan, I'll take out a loan. If I take government money that I have to pay back, I have now debt on the books. On an innovative company, not on a revenue. If I am at revenue stage, then I can take on debt and I can balance the books. Well, that's all great. At the early stages of a company, it actually, if I take on debt, it makes it almost impossible to get other investors in. Because the next round of investors, they want to see that the previous investors have skin in the game. They don't want to be burdened by that. So I would, no matter what you decide, it's actually kind of interesting because I see both aspects of state right now. One is just get out. I mean, the young guys are all just like, please just get out of our way, right? Because there's just too much burden. Very few of them actually say, give us money, which is really interesting. But on the give us money side, I would personally advise every startup company you never take on debt early on because it makes it really, really hard to bring on additional investors, irrespective of whether or not I'm able to pay it back later on. Just makes it really hard.
Ďakujem veľmi pekne, thank you. A zdvihnutá ruka tam vzadu, ak môžem poprosiť.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Robin Vaudry from the European Investment Fund, and we are working in close partnership with the Ministry of Finance on such a scheme of, let's say, revolving support for SMEs. And I feel there's a little bit of a misunderstanding because it's not about placing debt on SMEs. It's about, when we talk about returnable financing, it's about a commercial approach to the financing. And this can be done through, for example, seed capital, where the expectation is that the fund manager who is giving the capital to the SME will hope to get a return at some point in the future. That doesn't mean that the SME is burdened with debt. It doesn't mean that the SME can fail and not repay anything. That is the case. It just means that there's more chance of getting some of the money back. So instead of doing the grant and having zero chance of getting your money back, you're giving seed money with a chance of getting your money back and a commercial approach so that the recipient of the funds has a aligned interest with the investor to make it succeed, and placing the funds, the decision-making as to where the funds should go into the hands of the right people who know how to, let's say, invest in the right technologies, in the right startups of tomorrow, and not giving these funds to ministries or agencies with not necessarily the right experience to invest in those companies of tomorrow. So I think maybe there's been a little bit of a misunderstanding when we talk about repayable finance. It doesn't mean loan-based finance. It can be loan-based as well. In the Jeremy initiative, which we are implementing here in Slovakia, we signed agreements with banks at the beginning of April, which will mean that SMEs will have access to finance at preferential conditions. They will still go to the bank. They will still apply for a loan, companies which can take a loan, but they will be asked for less collateral, and they will have a reduced interest rate. So certain SMEs which wouldn't have been able to get loans will now be able to get loans, and other SMEs will be able to get the same loans at better conditions. This isn't suitable for every small company or startup, of course, which is why this is being done in conjunction with a venture capital and seed financing scheme. And this is the next step, which hopefully will be launched in the next couple of months. And this is not replacing grants. There's still millions and millions of euros, which is implemented through grants here in Slovakia. But this is the beginning of a new way of financing, which the European Commission and the European Investment Fund and the Ministry of Finance and many others believe is the future. Because national budgets are constrained, the structural funds grants will not keep flowing forever. At some point, when it dries up, where will the funding come from? And if you at least have some of that budget going to repayable schemes, you have a chance of sustainable financing, at least in complementarity with grant funding, and traditional commercial funding. Thank you.
Ďakujem. Dotkli sme sa otázky zamestnávania ľudí, otázky financovania. Moja otázka by smerovala na Stevena a pochádza tiež z publika. Ako chceme motivovať ľudí, ktorí pracujú, povedzme programátorov, ktorí pracujú pre veľké firmy, aby mali tú odvahu, aby prejavili ten podnikateľský duch, aby si založili firmy. Ako napríklad Dell motivuje svojich zamestnancov, aby skúšali a realizovali tento entrepreneurship spirit.
Sorry, it's I can't say I've got the 100% answer, because if I did, we'd probably be a 200,000 person company and bigger than Apple and bigger than everybody else. But I'll tell you what we try to do. And by the way, this holds true across the board. The single biggest asset any company or a country has when it comes to innovation are the people. And if you want to get people to be creative, you want to get them to be innovative, you want to get them to behave like entrepreneurs, as I said earlier, they've got to feel they're in an environment where they're safe to do so. So I would say anybody who's not innovating, anybody who's not been an entrepreneur, needs to act as an enabler for the people that are. So from a government perspective, they need to enable those people to innovate. And, you know, the devil is in the detail in terms of how you finance it and how you do all of that type of stuff. But the rest of us can't be seen to be in the way of that, because what happens, particularly in an environmental and culture that you have here, is people get afraid very quickly. Yeah, and the obstructions become reasons why they can't succeed, as opposed to things that need to be overcome. So when we try and do this in Dell, the expression we have, and this is one that Michael Dell came out with, and he's quite conservative for an innovator and entrepreneur. He doesn't take an awful lot of risk. But the change in our company over the last number of years has been, you know what, now is the time to ask for forgiveness, not permission. Yeah. Once you put a barrier in front of people that they've got to get permission to do something, particularly creative, innovative people, it just becomes a reason for them not to do it. Yeah. So I would encourage innovators and entrepreneurs, just do it. If you get it wrong, say sorry and try again. Yeah. And that's the type of approach we try to have inside Dell, which is, you know what, try something. Yeah. Don't gamble the company jewels all on one bet. So don't kind of put it all on black 31 or whatever. Yeah, but you know it's kind of, you know, there's this conservative risk taking sounds like a little bit of an oxymoron, but being enabled or feel empowered to take risk, but do it so in a safe environment. I think that is the critical thing for if you want to create that type of environment. And I would say and I'll probably use this summing up as well, I kind of look at innovation in a couple of ways. There's what I call innovation light, yeah, and that's where you try to be best in class at something. In other words, somebody's gone there and you're just going to go and do it better than them. Well, that's kind of innovation light. The innovation plus is when you try to be first in class. That's shooting in the dark. That's when you open the door, it's dark, you don't know where you're going, and you hope you don't fall down an elevator shaft. Yeah, but that's what true innovation is, where you're trying to be first in class. Yeah, and then the real innovators and the guys that do this serially are constantly opening doors and going into the dark. Constantly. Sometimes they fall down the elevator shaft, but they dust themselves down and go do it again. Yeah, but the critical thing is they operate and work in an environment where they feel it's safe to do so. That failing is not a bad thing. Failing is only a bad thing if you don't learn from it. And I'll just remind people of the Einstein's definition of insanity, which is keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. Yeah, that's just bad failure. Yeah, and it holds true to trying to set up different kind of support organizations. If you keep trying to set them up the same way and it didn't work the first 3 times, it's not going to work the 4th time. Yeah, we call it in our business, we call it closed loop corrective action. When something doesn't work, you do a closed loop corrective action. You go figure out, well, what happened? Why did it go wrong? And what do you put in place to make sure that when you do that again, it's not going to happen again? So you put something different, you put a corrective action in place. But again, it's the key thing in all of this is ensuring that the creative folks, the innovative folks, have that safe environment in which they can work.
Thank you very much, Steven. Blížime sa ku záveru dnešnej diskusie. Chcel som preto poprosiť, videl som zdvihnutú ruku Jozefa, chcel som vás teda poprosiť o také minútové zhrnutie a možno, že ten kľúčový message, odkaz, ktorý by ste možno chceli, aby si účastníci dnešného stretnutia zo sebou odniesli. Takže Jožko, nech sa páči.
Ďakujem pekne. Predstavte si, že sme si dali takú víziu v roku 2020 mať okolo 10 000 ľudí pracujúcich v informačných komunikačných technológiách v Košiciach. Pri dnešnej fluktuácii 10% to znamená 1000 ľudí, každý rok je treba injektovať nových do celého systému. Ak chceme injektovať 1000 ľudí, musíme ich vygenerovať 2000, pretože skúsenosť nám ukazuje, že asi 50% zostáva v regióne a môže posilniť tento sektor. Ak chceme vygenerovať 2000 ľudí pre prácu v ICT sektore, v IT sektore, to znamená, že my musíme na stredných školách objať okolo 6000 študentov, ktorí budú zameraní na technické, prírodné vedy a informačné technológie. Ale ak chceme mať také deti na stredných školách, tak podľa skúseností my musíme objať a starať sa, venovať sa vyše 20 000 deťom na základných školách, aby boli orientovaní na technické, prírodné a informatické vedy. A tento systém sme navrhli a tento systém sme začali realizovať. A ja verím, že v roku 2020, to je od teraz 8 rokov, že budeme úspešní. Ja len jednu message. Ak chceme byť úspešní v roku 2020, tak sme mali začať včera.
Ďakujem veľmi pekne. Chcel som poprosiť o taký záverečný odkaz alebo slovo aj našich zahraničných hostí. Najprv by som rád oslovil Mr. Charles Holland, please. Would you be please so kind to deliver a 1-minute summary what you want us to leave with?
Okay, first of all, I'm looking forward to establishing some relationships here in Slovakia. So if you just go to our website, you'll figure out how to get in touch with us. The second point I'd like to say is that it's really important to not think that you can innovate tomorrow without actually trying to explore new opportunities for which you don't know that you've got the immediate economic potential. That's kind of what we're about, is about trying to get the technology risk off the table, not really pursuing those far-out ideas that may then be the big successes in the future. And that's an important role.
Thank you very much. Mr. President Shyu, your presentation was very inspiring. Thank you so much. What would be maybe your words of encouragement for the participants of this conference? Words of wisdom.
Words for the government, because the government must play a very active role in providing an environment not only to support science and technology research, but also to nurture innovation and to cultivate talents for the industry.
Thank you very much. A rád by som pozval aj našich vzácnych hostí, zástupcov štátnej správy, možno, že o krátke zhrnutie a prípadne či si niečo odnášajú ako inšpiráciu do ich ďalšieho pôsobenia.
Pre mňa je tuto dôležité vidieť teda, že je ochota slovenských partnerov spolupracovať a myslím, že aj ministerstvo financií, škoda, že tu nie je školstvo, ale tí by to tiež potvrdili. Súhlasím plne s tým, že začali sme trošku neskoro, ale je dobré, že sme vôbec začali a tá stratégia alebo cesta spoločná, ako sa vydáme do roku 2020, nebude iba cestou do roku 2020, ale mala by byť postavená tak, aby sme ju udržali čo najdlhšie, či už do roku 2050, 2000, neviem koľko. A to sme na dobrej ceste.
Ďakujem. Robert?
Right, so maybe just to follow up on the discussion and some of the ideas which were bouncing around the room. I mean, maybe I wasn't clear enough, and essentially in terms of the reusable funds which we will use from the EU funds, it's probably around 5%, if we are good. So still 95% of the resources will go to the grants. I was just saying that, certain parts of the economy, the more or reusable funds are more suitable than the others. So the split, I mean, if you see, it's not as bad as you would expect initially, so not everything will be venture capital. And I think, we will probably not be better than US. I mean, I'm being a realist. However, on a note of fiscal deficit, this is ongoing debate, current situation in the Eurozone and the consensus which we have at the Eurogroup, where we go with our ministry, is as such, that we actually signed. It was a more social consensus that we signed to certain agreement, and we need to follow these procedures. So, even if I go personally, I read Mr. Stiglitz, I agree he has fantastic points, and I think, that, without the U.S. and without U.S. fiscal monetary policy, even the Eurozone would be in a bad shape, so I accept all these points. But as you said, we are a very small country, and we are bound by certain rules, and for ours, even politically very difficult to amend them. So I mean, just that you understand my point. Thank you.
Ja som sa chcel všetkým poďakovať, vám v obecenstve, ktorí hlasovali. Vyzerá to veľmi jednoznačne z otázok, ktoré sa spájajú s úspechom Slovenska a vedomostnej spoločnosti. Jednoznačne vychádza, že skoro polovica ľudí považuje za kľúčové práve vzdelávanie. Takže vieme o tom dlhodobo a myslím si, že tešíme sa na ďalšie príležitosti, kde si túto problematiku budeme môcť ďalej rozpracovať. No a na záver už len chcem zopakovať ešte raz slova Charlesa, ktorý povedal, a ešte aj niektorého zo speakerov, niekedy je lepšie ľutovať a ospravedlniť sa za to, že sme boli príliš inovatívni a niečo sme formálne nedodržali. Možno, že táto odvaha je to, čo našu malú krajinu môže posunúť niekde, ako nejakým spôsobom sa zaradiť do rádu tých, ktorí sú s tým červeným diplomom v tej Európskej únii. Ďakujem veľmi pekne.
Sorry guys, I wanted to say one last thing. It kind of dawned on me as we were having the conversation. You've kind of heard me kind of say innovation to me is a people business. It's all about people, and if you're not innovating, you need to be enabling it. What I'd like if someone could take an action away from this, I don't know who it is, and that's probably the first problem. But I know there is a startup community here in Slovakia. In this modern day of social media and global connectivity, can somebody create a global Slovak alumni? Because there are Slovak entrepreneurs and innovators outside of Slovakia. Connect the dots, pull those people together and create this community that's not just a Slovak inside the borders of Slovakia, but is globally. Yeah, we all know who they are. We all know Slovak people abroad somewhere that are innovating or being entrepreneurs. Pull them all together, because I guarantee you that community will come up with the way to go, as opposed to probably some of the rest of us here.